Nobody knows her location or if those demands were from the snatchers, scammers, or someone on the inside. The final secrets hidden within that SUV's onboard computer stay locked away from the public. It could be years before we learn the truth, especially if the state needs to shield those facts for a trial. There is no confirmation on her survival, though the sheriff is holding on to hope. Her loved ones share that faith. And without proof of the worst, we will keep believing as well. What we do know is this. Buried deep inside the software logs of that sapphire-colored SUV, hidden in tiny skin cells on a discarded glove or the heart monitor that went silent at 2:28 a.m., captured in grainy security clips showing a stranger lurking near the porch before tragedy struck that night. A trail exists, and somewhere in or around Tucson, a person lives who knows her precise location. If you are that individual, dial 520-351-4900 or reach out to federal agents at 1-800-CALL-FBI. The Kin's $1 million prize still stands for her safe return. Bring her back. 45 days have passed since the hunt began for Nancy Guthrie, the mother of Today Show host Savannah Guthrie. Detectives are currently bogged down in the tedious world of forensic genealogy, mapping family trees from mixed DNA at her Tucson home to find a lead. We also have fresh details about the surveillance setup at the Guthrie residence. At 9:30 p.m. on January 31st, 2026, in Tucson, Arizona, an 84-year-old woman exited a blue Honda CR-V. Her son-in-law stood by, making sure she reached her front entrance safely. At 9:50 p.m., the garage door shut, marking the final confirmed sighting of Nancy Guthrie, whose daughter is a famous national news anchor. Sometime between 9:50 p.m. Saturday and 2:28 a.m. Sunday morning, her life-sustaining pacemaker lost its digital link to her smartphone. She was 84 and struggled to walk, required critical daily medication, and couldn't even manage 50 yards alone, yet she vanished from her house. No signs of a break-in, no audible screams, and zero accidental traces left behind. Only evidence handled with clinical precision remains, plus one car police refused to release. We aren't here to point fingers today. We won't spread rumors or fuel the theories that have already caused this grieving family massive pain. We're here because a blue Honda CR-V is sitting in a Pima County police lot in Arizona, and the family who owns that vehicle still hasn't gotten it back. 6 weeks later, the big question the media hasn't fully explored is this: what exactly are they searching for in that car? And why is that specific vehicle so critical to the investigation? Don't go anywhere, because our latest findings completely change how we look at this case. To understand the car's importance, you must view the timeline exactly like the detectives do. Not as just a tragedy, but as a series of facts held together by the thinnest possible threads. On the afternoon of January 31st, Nancy Guthrie, born Nancy Ellen Long in 1942, a 50-year Tucson resident who raised 3 kids alone after her husband Charles died in a 1988 Mexican mining accident, took an Uber to her daughters for dinner. Annie, her oldest, is an author married to an Italian musician named Tommaso Tioni since 2006, living about 4 miles away. It's a short trip through a quiet Tucson suburb where neighbors typically know one another. We don't know the dinner conversation or if the atmosphere was warm or tense. What police confirmed is that the night ended around 9:45 p.m. and Tommaso Tioni, the son-in-law, gave her a ride home. Sheriff Chris Nanos identified Tioni as the last person to see Nancy alive. According to the sheriff, he waited until his mother-in-law was safely inside before leaving. The garage door shut at exactly 9:50 p.m., a perfectly normal occurrence for any family. A meal, a drop-off, and a quick wave goodbye. Furthermore, detectives have explicitly cleared Annie and Tommaso, with the sheriff calling them victims of cruel internet gossip. The DNA recovered didn't match any family, but things took a strange turn after that. This is when the schedule stops making sense. At 1:47 a.m., Nancy's doorbell camera disconnects. By 2:12 a.m., motion-activated sensors on the property pick up movement. Then at 2:28 a.m., the pacemaker syncing her heart rhythm to her phone goes silent forever. Consider that sequence. Someone or something disabled that doorbell camera at 1:47. 25 minutes later, movement was detected. Exactly 11 minutes later, the one piece of tech literally inside Nancy's chest, a pacemaker she couldn't remove, suddenly went dark. The Pima County Sheriff's Department stated they believe Nancy was kidnapped. Her home was immediately designated a crime scene. They called in homicide detectives not because of a body, but because the evidence was that serious. Blood was discovered near the front door, and forensic tests confirmed it was Nancy's. Her Nest doorbell camera was gone, ripped out from its mount at the entrance. It seems the data was taken too, and neighbors later reported their own security footage from that night was missing. Police reportedly asked residents about strange connectivity issues in the neighborhood around the time of the kidnapping. This certainly wasn't some impulsive crime. Whoever did this had a plan, did their research, and knew her cameras and routine. This intel came out because the FBI worked with Google, the firm owning Nest Camera, to pull video snippets from the compromised tech. The findings were horrifying. A masked guy approaching Nancy Guthrie's front entryway, trying to hide the camera with his glove before backing away, using garden plants to mask the lens when his hands failed. Agents say he stands roughly 5 feet, 9 to 10, average build, hauling a black 25-liter Ozark Trail pack armed with a pistol holster showing at his waist. Here is one specific point the police have been very secretive about. An older photo shows the same guy without the bag or weapon. He had been there before, casing the place and scouting, plotting, and then between 1:47 and 2:28 a.m. on February 1st, he returned to finish the job. Now we hit the part of this mystery that lacks a full explanation. Within the initial 24 hours, detectives served a warrant. One of the items they grabbed was a car. Not Nancy's or the abductor's car, which remains unknown, but the blue Honda CR-V belonging to Annie Guthrie and Tommaso Tioni. The SUV that took Nancy home that night, it was hauled away and logged as evidence. Pima County officials confirmed this. Weeks later, when the press asked if the family had it back, they were told no. The car was still at a shop under police guard, currently being reassembled after what the sheriff called an extremely deep forensic investigation. By mid-March 2026, 6 weeks after Nancy vanished, Annie and Tommaso were still waiting. The public first heard about the car from journalist Ashley Banfield, an ex-News Nation reporter, on her podcast, Drop Dead Serious, citing a law enforcement contact with great credentials and inside knowledge. Banfield claimed the car was in the evidence locker. She also mentioned, and this caused a firestorm, that her contact labeled Tommaso Tioni as the main suspect. She noted these were just theories, not proof, but the damage was already done. Social media went wild. People attacked the family name. Sheriff Chris Nanos responded aggressively. He called the report sloppy, stating publicly that they had no one listed as a suspect. He said no one was cleared, but clarified there was no named suspect or person of interest. Media reports claimed that Savannah Guthrie was absolutely livid. Insiders said she might sue. Megyn Kelly noted the Today host was furious. Banfield stuck to her guns. She spoke with media mogul Dan Abrams and insisted her source stood by the claim that Tioni was still a suspect in the eyes of at least one person on the case. This much is certain. The sheriff denies suspects, while Banfield's source names a prime one. Both accounts cannot be factually accurate at the same time, but they might reflect different stages of a probe where public stance and reality differ. The media drama isn't the priority. What really matters is what was happening to that car and why. Bob Creer, an ex-SWAT commander for Pima County, told Parade Magazine the details clearly. When police hold a vehicle for weeks, they follow a checklist that is much deeper than people think. The first part is basic forensic work, swabbing for DNA inside, finding prints on the handles, wheel, and dashboard, the seatbelts, armrests, and checking for hair or fibers or any organic samples that show if someone outside the family was in that car. But Creer highlighted something usually overlooked: digital evidence, which is arguably the most vital part of the search. Modern cars are basically computers on wheels. That blue Honda is a newer model with sensors and logging systems that track data the driver never sees. Like GPS history, precise trip times, and speed records, when doors opened, belt usage, and Bluetooth logs showing every phone that's synced and when. Think about the importance of that for this investigation. If the GPS shows the car in a weird spot when Nancy vanished, or any other critical time, that is evidence. When a Bluetooth log flags a random device syncing up during a weird time frame, that becomes a solid lead. If the security sensors show the car doors opening and closing at some ungodly hour, it raises a major red flag. Ex-SWAT leader Creer mentioned that detectives can layer this digital footprint against what they have already gathered from elsewhere. Records from cell towers, pings from doorbell cameras, and even the exact moment a pacemaker stops its rhythmic beating. They can paint a digital portrait of everywhere that vehicle traveled with incredible accuracy, or prove where it never was. There is also a rumor floating around, though unverified, that investigators and experts are looking closely at AirTags. These tiny Apple tracking chips are small enough to be tucked into a wheel well or hidden behind a bumper. Police might be searching for a tracker on the car, not to prove the family is guilty of anything, but to find a trail leading back to whoever was actually stalking Nancy Guthrie before she vanished. If the abductor knew her daily habits, her specific car, and her routine, a GPS tracker explains that mystery perfectly. That lead has not been proven yet, but nobody is counting it out either. Here is the main takeaway. The authorities are not hanging on to this vehicle for 6 weeks just because they have a backlogged schedule. They kept it because modern cars are data gold mines that can ruin a suspect, and they want every single bite. As they stripped the Honda, the rest of the evidence was coming together while also proving to be incredibly frustrating for the team. Law enforcement ended up finding several different gloves in the woods and streets surrounding Nancy Guthrie's residence. One specific glove found about 2 miles away looked like a dead ringer for the pair seen on the doorbell video. The Federal Bureau confirmed that the item was rushed to the lab for a full genetic profile analysis. Once those results arrived, they hit a wall. The DNA belonged to a male who was not in any system. He was not part of the 19 million individuals whose genetic markers are stored in the National Offender Database. That glove belonged to a person who has never been booked, never done time, or just never had their DNA recorded. FBI agents then turned to their next major tool, which is known in the industry as genetic genealogy. It is the same strategy that unmasked the Golden State Killer and finally cracked the case against Brian Kohberger. The process works by scanning DNA against public sites like 23andMe to find distant relatives of the suspect. Then they map out a massive family tree until they can finally zero in on who the sample belongs to. Pima County Sheriff Nanos has already cautioned the public that this deep dive method can take months or even years. Success depends on whether a relative has actually uploaded their own genetic data to a commercial database voluntarily. There is no surefire promise it will work, but it is a vital thread that they have to follow. The genetic material pulled from inside the Guthrie home only made the investigation feel even more tangled and messy. Detectives found a mix of DNA from several people on the property, and none of it belonged to the family. None of those hits matched anyone in the federal system, but the main sample pointed toward another unidentified male. This is a huge deal because it suggests the person inside her house that night left a biological signature behind. That kind of evidence is the sort that can link a criminal to a crime scene for the rest of time. While the lab techs worked around the clock, something else started happening that was even harder to figure out. A few ransom notes surfaced. One hit a local news station, while another went to TMZ demanding Bitcoin payment. Both demands came with strict time limits, and by February 9th, those deadlines had both come and gone. There has been no official reply, no money sent, and no proof that the victim is still even alive. The Bureau set up a specific Bitcoin wallet, and TMZ reported some movement, but the meaning of that activity is unclear. Whether that was a digital trap, a payout, or just the agents testing the waters remains a total secret for now. Forensic expert Joseph Scott Morgan provided what is likely the most grounded way to look at this ransom situation. In an interview with News Nation, he spoke about a criminal pattern that he has witnessed throughout his career. Professional kidnappers often target older folks with high-profile families or deep pockets, using them for quick financial gain. They basically rush into the house, grab the victim, and disappear before the neighbors even notice a thing, he noted, explaining how these predators take advantage of the elderly and the people who care for them. Savannah Guthrie's fame as a co-anchor on the Today Show, one of the biggest morning programs, makes her a target. Being the face of such a high-rated broadcast essentially turns her mother into a symbol of wealth for these criminals. It didn't matter if the captor knew the family's net worth, they just had to think the payout was big. By February 10th, police picked up a guy to grill him. He got flagged during a routine stop. Detectives then served a search warrant at his place over in Rio Rico, Arizona. Turns out, the residence belonged to Josefina, his mother-in-law. The suspect and his wife moved in there temporarily after getting kicked out of their last spot. Josefina gave News Nation an exclusive interview. She defended him, claiming he was a decent guy with no priors or violent streaks. She swore he was home with her all weekend. When shown the Ring camera stills from Nancy Guthrie's place, she claimed the person in the photo wasn't him. She also mentioned his van wasn't even running. By the next morning, he was out, but Nancy was still gone. Investigators wouldn't say if he was a legitimate suspect or just someone they felt like talking to. But just the act of picking him up and searching a private residence shows exactly what the cops were thinking during those first few weeks. They were hunting for a local who matched the doorbell video, someone with a specific height, frame, and stride, characteristics that lined up with the federal profile of the masked prowler at Nancy's front door. This case always comes back to one big contradiction, and that car is the perfect example. Police have already cleared Annie Guthrie and Tommaso Tioni. The sheriff even called them victims. The crime scene DNA didn't match them. They've been nothing but helpful. There's zero public proof they did anything wrong, yet their car is still sitting in a garage. 6 weeks later, a mechanic is still taking it apart for the police. Why keep an innocent family's vehicle for 42 days? There might be simple reasons, like a backlog in the lab, or the sheer amount of evidence they're sifting through. Or maybe the digital forensics from the car's computer is just taking forever to process. But there's a harder possibility, one that veteran investigators have hinted at in their professional circles. Former federal operative Jennifer Coffindaffer, one of the most respected voices following this story, noted in early March that Pima County officials were finally getting ready to release the SUV. She heard the family was finally getting their ride back. She stood by their innocence, but pointed out something vital about the way this case is being handled. That vehicle, she explained, is just one of many items the Bureau took for testing. The word many is key. The car is a piece of the puzzle, not the whole thing. This investigation has layers. That's why the car is more important than it looks. Think about all the digital breadcrumbs the feds are following. The doorbell footage they grabbed from Google's servers, thumbnails from cameras that caught movement in the yard before the kidnapping happened, missing tapes from neighbors, cell signals from February 1st, and even pacemaker data, GPS logs from Nancy's rideshare, and now the internal data from the Honda CR-V. Every bit of that info goes onto a timeline where everything can be double-checked. Detectives are basically building a digital replay of every single move, looking for anything strange in the days surrounding Nancy Guthrie's disappearance. A former agent described the silence from the police in a very positive light. She wants to believe, and the family hopes, that the silence means the cops are actually onto something. That the slow, boring work of digging through a blue Honda CR-V isn't a lack of progress, it's the definition of it. Toward the middle of March, Jennifer Coffindaffer shared a map Annie Guthrie gave to neighbors early on, looking for witnesses or any home security footage near the house. Coffindaffer's take on the area was pretty grim. The path leading away from Nancy's neighborhood is incredibly lonely. There are very few streetlights, homes, or traffic stops in sight. If a car left with its lights off on a dark January night, there might not be a single camera to see it. Annie's frantic map distribution is typical for a family member. Coffindaffer wrote, "She was just desperate for answers." Annie was raised right there and still resided only 4 miles away. The loneliness of that getaway track might reveal why this case is so puzzling despite the massive joint operation. Even with feds, Border Patrol, drones, and choppers using wireless tech to find her medical device, no vehicle of interest has surfaced. Hundreds of thousands of commuters were traveling those same roads throughout that evening. Sheriff Nano cited the void, the shadows, and the prep work as proof the abductor was a pro. By mid-March 2026, 45 days since her disappearance in Tucson, Nancy remains missing with no suspects in custody. Officials haven't outed any suspects yet, but her kin are putting up $1 million for any lead that brings her back. Federal agents and local deputies put up $100,000 matched by a private benefactor. Bounty totals over $1.2 million, sparking over 1,500 leads since the announcement. Detectives are sifting through every tip as the probe evolves into a dedicated, permanent operation. Switching gears doesn't mean they have given up. It is a promise that the badge is in this for the long haul. Technicians are currently running that glove's biological profile through various family tree databases. A breakthrough might take months, and authorities are keeping a tight lid on whatever data they pulled from that Honda. The sheriff insists that his team is finally gaining ground. He is officially on the record stating his conviction that Nancy survives. A lab specialist recently mentioned that dragging cases out makes things tougher simply because physical clues tend to rot over time. Memories fade while servers get wiped, making every second vital. Yet the kidnapper's identity remains a total mystery. The ransom demands went to a local news station and to TMZ. Both had Bitcoin wallet addresses and deadlines. Both deadlines passed without payment or proof of life. The FBI set up a monitored wallet. Movement was detected. What that movement means has never been disclosed. Forensic expert Joseph Scott Morgan described the pattern clearly. Professional kidnappers target elderly people connected to wealth or fame. They move fast. They disappear before neighbors notice. Savannah Guthrie's name alone was enough to make her mother a symbol of potential payout. The sheriff confirmed the investigation has shifted to a dedicated, permanent operation. Specialized teams only. No less urgency, just a different phase. Coffin Daffer said, "The silence around the car is not absence of progress, it is the definition of it." The suspect visited the property before the night of the crime. He was captured on an earlier photo without the backpack or holster. He was already mapping the layout, the camera positions, and the routine. The Honda data may tell investigators whether that surveillance extended further than anyone knows. The most underrated evidence in a modern crime is the data that collects itself. Every phone ping, every car log, every Bluetooth connection happens without anyone choosing to leave it behind. That is why the car matters beyond the family connection. It is a passive recorder of movement, contact, and timing. If anything unusual happened in or around that vehicle in the days surrounding February 1st, the onboard computer almost certainly knows. Forensic genealogy on the glove DNA may take months. The car data processing may take just as long. The getaway route may have had no cameras. This is a case that was designed to be hard to solve, but it was not designed to be impossible. Nancy Guthrie is 84 years old, requires daily medication and a pacemaker, and has been missing for 45 days. Her family has raised over $1.2 million in reward funds. The sheriff is on the record saying he believes she is still alive. If you have any information about Nancy Guthrie's disappearance, call the Pima County Sheriff at 520-351-4900 or the FBI at 1-800-CALL-FBI. Submit tips at tips.fbi.gov. A reward of over $1 million is unclaimed. Subscribe for every update as the forensic genealogy results come in and the car data is released. Somewhere in Tucson, a person knows where she is. The evidence is closing in on them, whether they realize it or not. 6 weeks after Nancy Guthrie disappeared, her daughter and son-in-law still did not have their car back. A blue Honda CR-V sat in a Pima County evidence lot being taken apart by mechanics working under police guard. The car had already been cleared of suspicion in the obvious sense. Annie Guthrie and Tommaso Tioni were explicitly named as victims by the sheriff. The DNA from the crime scene did not match them. They cooperated fully from day one. So why hold the car for 42 days? Because modern vehicles are computers on wheels. GPS trip history, door open and closed timestamps, speed logs, belt usage, and Bluetooth records showing every phone that connected to that car and exactly when. Former SWAT commander Bob Creer explained investigators layer that data against everything else they have. Cell tower pings, doorbell camera timestamps, pacemaker signal loss at 2:28 a.m. Every digital thread cross-references to build a minute-by-minute picture of that night. There is also an unverified but active theory. Investigators may be searching the car for an AirTag or GPS tracker. Not to implicate the family, But to find evidence that someone was stalking Nancy routine in the weeks before February 1st, the road out of the Catalina Foothills neighborhood is nearly pitch black. Few streetlights, minimal traffic camera. Former FBI agent Jennifer Coffindaffer noted that a car driving without lights on a dark January night might not have been captured on a single lens. The glove found 2 miles from the scene matched no one in CODIS, the FBI national DNA database of 19 million records. The unidentified male who left it had never been processed through the criminal justice system. Forensic genealogy is now running on that sample. A second DNA profile was found inside the house itself, also unmatched, also belonging to an unidentified male. 2 separate biological traces, 2 separate dead ends in federal databases, 2 separate threads now being fed into ancestry platforms to find relatives.